Welcome to VLGA Connect. My name is Catherine Arndt and I'm the Chief of the VLGA Connect studio. I hope you enjoy today's Connect episode brought to you by the VLGA, the national broadcaster on all things local government.
It's a big hello and welcome to another edition of TGU from VLGA Connect. And joining me on the program this week is Tony Ranick from Hunt & Hunt Lawyers. Great to see you, Tony. How's your week been?
It's been a busy week, exciting week. Got to spend some time down at Baw Shire today in Druin through the VLGA. Myself, Julie Reid, a regular guest on this show, Melissa Scadden from Justicia Lawyers. We went down to Druin and spent a day with councillors, and kudos to councillors. It was all about building teams, working better as a team, being a more effective council. Council's doing really well there, right. But kudos to them in recognising that you can always improve, you can always aspire to be a little better, and it's great to have these opportunities to check in and just consider how we're going. So well done to Anne-Marie McCabe, who's the mayor.
Who's back on deck after the Narracan election, Tony?
Absolutely. Just fresh back on deck after the results of that election being declared. And also to the CEO, Mark Dupay, who, is part of the role, of course, of CEOs under Local Government Act is to support that ongoing learning and development of councillors.
Excellent. Well done. Good to hear. In the news this week, we've got a few stories to get your thoughts on and to bring people up to speed on. People might recall, I think last year, the story involving a councillor at Kingston City Council who was caught up in this court decision about a community Facebook page where he'd been held accountable, I guess, or liable for comments that had been made on that Facebook page. He's fighting that decision, and I think as of this week has lodged a Supreme Court appeal, Tony.
That's correct. That's my understanding too, Chris, and there's been media on that. I've had some contacts and emails from Councillor Howe in that regard. So it was quite an onerous decision in terms of, I think it was $205,000 award against Councillor Howe. The implications of the case really relate to hosts of Facebook or social media pages being liable for third-party posts that might be defamatory. I understand Councillor Howe's defence is around this innocent dissemination defence, which really it's a defence to protect publishers who unwittingly publish defamatory content, newsagents, booksellers, these sort of people. But I understand it's quite an expensive process, the appeal, and I believe Councillor Howe is reaching out to media outlets, private individuals who I guess share his concerns with the county court decision and looking for some support, financial support for that appeal.
So, Tony, if I understand it correctly, there's been, in principle, support from around the country for changing the law in this respect, but it's not going to come in for some time, which of course doesn't help Councillor Howe. Am I right about that?
That's right. There is seems to be agreement across the states and territories to introduce some legislation that would take effect in 2024, which would be protection for hosts of for example, social media pages, etc. And you can imagine, an individual councillor here, but also you can imagine just a community activist, a council organisation themselves or a community group might find that a third party does post something on their website that is problematic, and having that legislative protection might be important.
And I understand that he created this back quite some time ago, I think like 13 years ago when he was 16 years of age, wasn't a councillor at the time, but is now, as of the last round of elections. It's a pretty unfortunate way this has played out.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. The comments in question on the page were posted when Councillor Howe, prior to him becoming a councillor at Kingston, although I think the the action being brought and largely argued was whilst he was a councillor. But yeah, wide-ranging implications this decision potentially has for hosts of those pages, and we'll watch with interest the appeal process and maybe put in the link a contact to Councillor Howe, maybe his private email address, if anyone's interested in contact him and asking him about the case or be supporting him
providing some support
through it.
Happy to do that. And as you say, we will watch that one with interest. These things take time, of course. So if the appeal was lodged this week with the Supreme Court, I'm guessing it'll be some time before we see too much develop there.
Yeah, look, there'll be preliminary hearings and such later this year, but in terms of a substantive decision, could be many months away.
Interesting development at Yarra Ranges this week, where the mayor felt the need to close the council meeting that was in progress out of safety concerns for the councillors and the staff, because of, I imagine, a number of outbursts from people in the gallery. We often hear about contentious decisions leading to vocal galleries, but we don't often see them lead to this sort of action being taken and the police being called, Tony.
Yeah, look, thankfully, it's not a common occurrence. I think in this case, it was after only 10 minutes of the council meeting. The meeting had to be closed. Police, as you say, were called, and I've read varying reports. I think the council website says over 100 people were there protesting, if you like. I've seen even greater numbers in some media, and of course we would condemn, anyone and any group that would shut down the operation of local democracy in a council meeting. Absolutely appropriate that people have an opportunity to have their say, but not that the process of democracy is shut down. But I gather this was about a strategic planning, the 20-minute neighbourhood concept.
Right.
No doubt Yarra Ranges will be, they've got an engagement piece to have with at least a part of their community is clearly concerned here, and no doubt they'll be reacting to that as a council and seeking to, I guess, engage positively with the community.
That's just explained something for me, Tony. I hadn't made the connection, but I noticed the council had put out a statement earlier in the week correcting misinformation about the 20-minute neighbourhood, what it called misinformation about that concept that was clearly circulating in the community, and that's bubbled up to what happened at the council meeting by the sounds of things.
Yeah, absolutely. The notion of the 20-minute neighbourhood being things are, facilities that the community use are walkable within a 20-minute distance. That seems to have been interpreted here as meaning that the community will be confined within that space. So I doubt that was the intent, and I'm sure that, as I say, the Yarra Ranges Council will be engaging with the community, as you mentioned, to correct any misunderstandings.
I was surprised to see that the concept was controversial, but there's obviously more to it than appears on the surface. Not for now, but for the next episode of the Local Government News Roundup, shameless plug, the podcast that you should be all subscribed to on your podcast player, I do have a story about a council in Canada where a similar thing has occurred, but it wasn't because of public agitators. It was because of issues between councillors that caused the mayor to close a meeting and call security. So I'll tell you more about that one on the next podcast. Now, representation reviews are getting underway around the state. We've talked about this on a previous edition. There's, I think, 4 councils. The first cab's off the rank. One of those is Strathbogie. The mayor at Strathbogie this week has revealed that she's looked for or asked for an extension of time on this, and there's some concerns, and I'm sure not just in Strathbogie, about the speed with which this process seems to appear and happening, and the amount of time that community members have to make submissions about these potential changes. Well, in the case of Strathbogie, definite changes to be compliant with the Act that are coming in terms of ward structures, etc. Have you heard much concern about the timelines, at least, Tony?
I've certainly got some sympathy for Councillor Laura Binks here, the Mayor at Strathbogie, and anyone affected here. I mean, this is such a fundamental part of democracy in terms of, you know, what's our structures at council and how do we elect our councillors. I believe that there was about a week or so's notice of the intention to call for submissions, and the period for interested persons to make submissions is a 21-day period, which seems quite short in the context of, you know, the critical importance of this, the ongoing impact on governance in that community, and the time of year as well. We're still early in the year, so perhaps some decision maker in government will see fit to perhaps grant an extension there. I believe the submissions go to the Victorian Electoral Commission.
To an independent panel that's been established, actually, which is being, I think, auspiced by the VSC. For some of those other councils, I guess there's more lead up time. They know this is coming. They've got time to prepare their communities for what's happening and to start thinking about it. In the case of Strathbogie and the other three who escape me at the moment that are off in the first round, there's really been no time to prepare those communities and to have that early conversation. So I'm also sympathetic to that argument.
Great that the community's got an opportunity to make submissions, and hopefully the period will be, you know, an appropriate period.
So there's 39 councils that will go through this process before the next election. So it's a significant number. Quick note, countback result this week from Mornington Peninsula Shire. This was due to the resignation of Kerry McCafferty back late last year, and Simon Brooks has been re-elected. Simon was on the council for 4 years up until 2020 and is now back in the same ward that he used to be in, the Sea Winds ward, and I understand will be sworn in next week. So welcome back to Councillor Brooks.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Now, councils in the news this week, Tony, not sure if you saw this one, a pretty detailed article from The Age looking at the school crossing supervisor situation. There's a shortage right across the state, and there were examples from really all corners of the state in this story. Variations in pay rates, difficulties in attracting people to those roles, and a call for more state government support. So another example of where councils are really struggling to find people to fill roles, but also feel that they're unjustly meeting the burden that goes with those roles.
Definitely that whole cost shift exercise. And my understanding is part of the challenge in attracting people to the role is that, you know, the short-term employment period, you know, you might be only working for an hour and a half, 2-hour blocks in a day, but we all know how important the role of the crossing supervisor, so we used to call them the lollipop man or the lollipop lady.
Oh, I think they still call them that, Tony.
I've got fond memories of Mrs. Cause. She used to take us across Lydiard Street to St. Columba's Primary School.
That sounds like a Ballarat story.
Yeah. So let's hope that this generates a bit of interest and more resources, because, you know, such a important role that crossing supervisors carry out throughout our municipalities.
Good to see it getting some widespread sort of mainstream media attention as well. We'll pop the link to that story in the show notes. Got a few interstate stories that I might just hold while we note that Sunil Bala, the CEO at Horsham City Council, it's been announced this week that he's been, I mean, they say a contract extension, but I would think from a legal point of view, it must be a new contract for a 4-year term, which means his employment has been extended with the council.
I think he's been there since 2018, so it would be, you know, a second or a third contract. But congratulations to Sunil. I think Robin Galeen is the mayor at Horsham. That's was announced recently, and he's got a lot of experience in that council, having come there from a few other councils, I think, in 2018.
I went there directly from the city of Maribyrnong, if I recall correctly. So that list I've got on the Roundup website, Tony, of CEO appointments during this term of the council, the number that haven't had something happen during these last few years is dwindling. So there's a few left that will need to be updated at some point. And of course, we're well aware that Melbourne's currently got an acting or an interim. Geelong, similar situation. And as we reported last week, monitors coming in there to oversee the process. So we've got a few big appointments to come in the not too distant future that we'll be able to report on. Just across the border, Tony, this is pretty extraordinary. Tributes have been flowing this week for Patricia Gould, who has passed away at the age of 87. I wasn't aware that Ms. Gould served on the Albury Council for 42 years, and it is said, and I haven't heard anyone able to rebut this, that she was Australia's longest serving female councillor. That's pretty extraordinary.
What an as you say, extraordinary contribution from 1975 through to 2016. Amazing contribution. 3 times Mayor at Albury as well.
And multiple years within each of those times. I was trying to work out, it's something like 8 or 9 years that she held the mayoralty during that period.
Wow. I think she received an Order of Australia medal some years ago, recognising her services to local government. But wow, it's just appropriate that, we do, as a sector, recognise the contribution of people like Patricia Gould, and also, really a bit of a pioneer for females in leading roles in local government, not just as a councillor, but as you say, as a mayor.
Very much so, Tony. Completely agree. All right, I want to look at a couple of stories that have come in this week from outside Victoria that I think are worthy of note. One just late this week, the Mayor of Gold Coast, Tom Tate, who's no stranger to controversy and the media grab, has said that acknowledgements of country are not going to be introduced at Gold Coast City Council meetings anytime soon. In fact, not in this current term, which has got a bit over a year to go. But he described the process as inefficient, and that he doesn't like to waste time, wants to get on with the business at council meetings. As you can imagine, that's attracted some interesting comment and criticism this week, Tony. Do you have a view? What I did, sorry, Tony, just before we get into discussion on this, what did surprise me is that only 60% of councils in Queensland do an acknowledgement of country. So it's not like Gold Coast is the only one. There's 40% that don't. I would imagine, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, that 100% of councils in Victoria do an acknowledgement of country at the start of their council meetings. Would I be wrong?
I'm certainly not aware of councils in Victoria that don't, but certainly they do things different. Up in Queensland, it's interesting that...
Can that be the title? Can that be the title of our episode? They certainly do things different up in Queensland. Thank you, Tom.
Don't you worry about that. So at Gold Coast, they have I believe they have a prayer, and then they sing the national anthem, or at least a standard attention or something for the national anthem.
Yes.
I believe that the acknowledgement of country is used at citizenship ceremonies and no doubt at other events at council. And I think it'd be interesting to hear, what the Gold Coast community themselves think about this, and what they think's appropriate, and what they think's a better use of time in terms of efficiencies or not. I'm a supporter of local democracy in terms of us at a local level, like we do in Victoria, making decisions about, how do we recognise Australia Day? How do we do our citizenship ceremonies? How do we open our meetings, be it with a statement of values of the councillors, an acknowledgement of country, in some councils a prayer or some other form of kind of reflection. So I think there's merit in each community considering, how they would like their council to open meetings, and so there's going to be some level of diversity, isn't there?
There is, and you're right. It's sort of a mirror of the conversation that happens in Victoria from time to time about whether to have a prayer or a statement of values, and that's been happening in recent times. I feel a research project coming on, and a rod for my own back, to try and work out actually across the 79 councils who's still doing a prayer, who's replaced it with some sort of statement of values, Who sings the national anthem? I'm not aware of any. That's a curious one. As you say, they do things differently up in Queensland. And just to confirm that everyone does an acknowledgement of country might be nice to know. So stay tuned. We'll see if someone can find the time to do that. I want to go south now, Tony, down into Tasmania. Who would have thought a councillor or an alderman in this case getting into trouble for posts made on social media, Facebook in this case? It's happened at Glenorchy, where Alderman Kelly Sims has been suspended from office for 3 months, effective on the 23rd of January, after a code of conduct panel found that she was in breach of parts of the code. And these were over Facebook posts and an email exchange that were said to be vindictive in nature and also sought to influence in the lead up to the election. I imagine no surprise, Tony, you could swap out the council name with a few examples from elsewhere around the country, couldn't you?
Absolutely. And so I'm not familiar with the Tasmanian code of conduct regime or their particular legislation, but you're absolutely right. Social media seems to be the source of a lot of complaints. In the Victorian context, comments like this would probably fall in the nature of personal comments that don't amount to robust debate and therefore aren't appropriate. And we know that from some recent decisions of arbiters, council conduct panels. Yeah, correct. Absolutely. I was also struck by the name of their code of conduct. It's the Aldermanic Code of Conduct.
Right. I missed that. That is interesting, isn't it? So they do things different down in Tasmania also. I did want to read an excerpt from the report, because this one perhaps a little bit more serious than some other examples, because the panel's actually referred this off to the Director of Local Government in relation to some of the actions. They say, she, being Alderman Kelly Sims, has indicated no remorse for her actions and does not appear to understand that her behaviour could not be considered reasonable when so many of her damaging statements were made without any evidence whatsoever. Additionally, the panel considers that her making threats about the complainant and his fiancée and the panel, so they're saying threats were made against the panel, is completely unacceptable and in addition amount to bullying and harassing conduct which may well constitute attempting to obstruct, prevent or pervert the due course of justice or the administration of the law. So under the Tasmanian system, that gets referred off to the Director of Local Government to consider whether further action might like to be taken.
Seems like quite unique scenario in terms of the councillor's response. And as I think it was Julie Reid last week made the point that while we have these code of conduct processes, in an ideal world, we'd have councillors, reflecting on their behaviour and apologising and sorting it out without having to go down that formal path in most instances.
Yes, it's always interesting to see the different jurisdictions and how they handle these issues. But what has come home to me many times over the past few years, Tony, is that every state is dealing with behavioural issues, and it's a problem.
And social media is really central.
Social media is usually at the heart of it. That's exactly right. And as we always say, it's not everyone. It's a small minority that are bringing the sector in these cases into disrepute. And I think contributing to the problem, the PR problem, as it was described by Mayor Joseph Wheeler a couple of weeks ago, that the sector experiences in the mainstream media.
Yeah, here, well said. I agree.
I've got one more to talk about, Tony. Have you got anything that caught your eye before we wrap up this week?
No, I suspect yours might be mine. Is yours about right? Single-use plastics?
No, it's not. Let's talk about single-use plastics, because that's a good point. The new regulations came into effect this week, and councils are no different to any other business or organisation. They must comply with these new single-use plastic rules.
Yeah, and I think it'll impact, as you say, on councils in a number of ways. Councils, often are catering and have those plates and knives and forks and straws and those sorts of things available, which of course we won't be able to purchase those single-use items in the future. But also from a municipal waste perspective, we're reducing what's going to landfill, thankfully. I know that in Victoria, particularly Melbourne, the home of the coffee in the morning, the takeaway coffee. They didn't go as far, I think, as banning the use of those cardboard coffee cups, which I think had gradually, just through the community, using reusable, bringing your own cup along, for example, that's phasing out, but they haven't gone to the step of banning them. But I think, look, this is a good step, and I think we'll all notice it. I noticed that cotton buds, you clean your ears with, but they will be certainly the plastic that's in them and will be banned from sale.
Well, that's probably a good thing, because I was always told you should never put anything in your ear other than your elbow, Tony. But anyway, we digress. Good pick up there. I'd forgotten about the single-use plastic ban. I'm sure everyone's aware of it. 70 councils were represented at a webinar that Sustainability Victoria held a few weeks back, and that's available online, as well as a range of materials to assist. And I guess it's already happened in the ACT in South Australia, so I guess it'll just become part of the way we operate from this way forward. Now, the one I wanted to just mention that caught my eye this week is out of South Australia, Tony, where a council law, and then ultimately the council supporting that councillor, has felt the need to reassure its residents that it is not exercising mind control on its residents. It's got a smart city program it's rolling out, which has got CCTV and sensors for bins and things. And there's a group called the No Smart Cities Action Group that's been protesting against the council's spending on this program. So they've felt the need to dispel those suggestions, those conspiracy theories about what smart cities are all about, which I think is a great shame.
I'm actually seeing this more and more often, Chris.
Yeah.
If you go on YouTube, there's that movement, the sovereign citizens.
Oh, yes.
Who, say, I'm not subject to your laws unless I explicitly consent. Yeah. I've had a council, I won't name the council, receive a letter from a landowner saying, I don't consent to paying rates anymore. I'm giving you notice. And there's this, 7, 8, 9 pages of voluminous legalese language, which doesn't make
no doubt
sense.
Irrelevant references to things like the Magna Carta and
exactly. Another council receiving notices about surveillance. So it's very similar about recording devices and that individual saying, I withdraw my consent to be to be recorded by interesting it's going to council, because it was also about red light cameras and number plate identification and these sorts of things. So I think it is a bit of an Americanism that seems to be becoming a bit more prevalent. Yeah. So we might see some more of that, but interesting development in Salisbury, you said. Yes,
the city of Salisbury in South Australia. You might have seen, you might not, Tony, it's been doing the rounds on social media for a few weeks, and some of the mainstream media picked it up this week. A delightful letter penned by an officer at the city of Kingston in response. Was it Kingston? No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Kingston. I think it was Monash. In response to a similar sovereign citizen type appeal against a parking infringement, with all those reasons why they weren't bound by those laws and weren't going to pay the fine. But it was dismantled very, very deftly, and I found it quite enjoyable to read it. So seek that out if you'd like a bit of a. I will.
If you're bored, get on YouTube, see some of the court cases, what the judges in the US say about the travellers who don't believe they need a driver's license.
Well, there you go. All right. That's ended up somewhere where I didn't think we'd be going today, but that's the beauty of TGU. Thank you, Tony. What's on your agenda for the coming week?
More about it, I think Brimbank next week. Some of those newly elected councillors on countbacks need some training, so continue to do that. And lots of advices, lots of probity matters, but lots of excitement too.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. We always love having you on the program. Thank you for your time today, and thank you to you and the team at Hunt & Hunt Lawyers for sponsoring our program here at VLGA Connect. We hope you, the listener and viewer, have got something out of today's show, and we look forward to having you with us for more very soon on VLGA Connect. Bye for now.